Right. Extension cord of third of it. Right.
How are you? Pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll see.
Sooner than later. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. But it doesn't matter until it's on the title. Put that restriction on it. It's on there. It's done. So. That may reduce the value a little bit. No, because it reduces the options. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you've got a neighbor, she's got 15 acres, and like $47 a year for it, just as part of that. She's right now, but it's divided with 5 properties on it. So, yeah, I think I looked at it on there, so they said, it was under $100 that you paid a year for taxes. Oh, yeah, it is, because it's not property at one level. Right, yeah. I don't know if she got some new letter. She came into the town and got it taken care of. Yeah. I don't know exactly how, but it's been that way for years. So. Yeah, because I wanted, yeah, because she was talking about selling the house and the land. There's people looking for it. There's people looking for 3 acres, and so she didn't want to sell the land. So.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission meeting for July 9th, 2015, beginning at 6:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Doug Flanagan. Here. Dan Buchholz. Here. Sherman Merrick.
Present.
Ken White. Ken Miller.
Here.
Al White.
Here.
Brian Fisher.
Here.
And Bob Stigler is absent.
And have we met all of the requirements of the Open Meetings Law?
Yes, we have.
And we can begin with citizens' comments. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? And we can move on to 5, meeting minutes from June 25th, joint public hearing, and June 25th, special plan commission meeting.
I have something from the attorney on the minutes for the special board meeting on the conditional use for Victoria Patterson's mother-in-law unit. And the attorney did not review the conditions, and he noticed afterward that number 2 and number 8 in your minutes are non-consistent. One says the conditional use approval is limited to Victoria Patterson, and then in number 8 it says a conditional use is not transferable without formal approval of the town board or town commission and town board. He suggested one of 3 possible conclusions to this. One is if you don't think that those 2 are non-consistent, that we can just go ahead and approve the way it is. If you think that it is non-consistent and you want to bring it back, you can table it for future discussion. And if you would like to make clarification in the minutes tonight, you can do that and amend and approve.
In other words, to clarify that the intent of what we did that evening was when the property gets sold, if the property gets sold, that the deed restriction transfers to the next property owner. Because number 2 says in the conditions, number 2 is it's for Victoria Patterson only, and number 8 says it's transferable with formal approval from the Plan Commission and Board. So I think what our intent was that it is for her at this particular time. Moving forward, there would be need from the Plan Commission and Board to approve and let them know that there is a deed restriction. And I think Planner Rybarczyk, you had a conversation with the attorney regarding the same thing. That's also your take on that?
Well, I hadn't had a chance to talk to him. I did see the email. I guess my intent was to clarify that today the conditional use is issued to Victoria Patterson. But our ordinance does say that it's not transferable until Plan Commission and Board make that determination. So my thought was that at that time, if the property was sold, they would have to come back and they would have to request an amendment to the CU where we would change condition 2 to the new property owner. So that's what my intent was in the condition. So I didn't necessarily see where there was an inconsistency, but again, I did not have a chance to physically talk to Attorney Macy on that.
Fair enough.
I have a question. If there's a deed restriction, like a future buyer is going to have that title examined and there will be a deed restriction. Why do we have to go through any of this? It's there.
For clarification purposes, because the 2 conditions conflict a little bit.
Because we designated an individual?
Yes.
Okay.
But you're right. It's going to come up in a title search. They're going to be aware of it, and then they'll have to come before the town board, and we'll switch the name from Victoria Patterson to John Doe. Is that clear as mud to everybody? And then
Sure.
we can move on with that. We don't have to revisit it with another board meeting.
Well, exactly.
I guess maybe the language needs to be cleaned up a bit. I don't see the inconsistency in that. I mean, I think I even asked a question for clarification of that at the meeting, if my recollection is correct. And my understanding is that it was not to go with the property, but it was to go with the current owner. And basically, if there was a change of ownership in the property, it would be reviewed at that point in time. I mean, if there's language to be cleaned up, that's fine. But I mean, certainly that was my understanding and intent of what we were trying to do.
Would you like me to put in, amended to say that it's for a change of ownership in number 8 to clarify, or just leave it the way it is?
I think in tonight's meeting minutes clarify it. I think that's
Very
what we
good.
talked about.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other comments on the meeting minutes from either the joint hearing or the Plan Commission? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I know Steens, I'm sorry. Okay. You weren't here. On to 6, discussion and possible action, conceptual CSM review. Owner is George Egan, West 237, South 5115 Big Bend Road. Planner Rybarczyk.
Sure. I'll do just kind of a general overview as to what the petitioner is proposing, and then I'll turn it over to Town Engineer Janelli to give his review on the CSM. The petitioner, Mr. Egan, is looking to consolidate the existing residence and existing accessory buildings on a 5.387 acre parcel, leaving a remnant parcel of approximately 36.623 acres. The parcel will remain zoned R1, residence single family. The parcel will include the existing residence and 5 accessory buildings. The accessory buildings, as we understand, are a shop and office, a detached garage, a garden shed, gazebo, and a water tank cistern. So that's kind of the general overview before you tonight. So with that, Engineer Janelli.
Sure. Thanks, Jamie. My letter is in the packet there, dated June 30th, and there's only really 4 comments on there, being conceptual. The first 2 are somewhat technical in nature, dealing with the CSM and the boundary. The third comment, Jamie kind of alluded to, there's a remnant parcel as a result that's approximately 35 or 36 acres, if you don't, 35 if you don't count the right away of Big Bend Road. We feel that there should be some notation referencing that remnant parcel and its size on the CSM at some point. And then comment number 4, I just noticed in looking at the aerial photography that the home and the driveway and some of the structures out there look a lot different today than they are shown on the actual CSM that we're looking at. So I asked that that be updated. And I think that's about it for me.
With regard to a few additional planning comments, in looking at the lot that is looking to be created, we do have, or we do need to discuss the aggregate total floor area of the accessory buildings. Based on the 5.3 acre parcel that's being created, they're allowed up to 3,495 square feet of accessory building. In the information I received, the water cistern tank was not included. It was hard to tell from aerial photography whether that is an actual structure per our ordinance. If it is deemed a structure per our ordinance, so if it's physically affixed to the ground, it would be deemed a structure, and therefore would need to be included in the calculations. If that's the case, the lot that they have created needs to be enlarged because they don't have enough land area for the aggregate of accessory structures. In addition, in our ordinance, you're allowed for a residential lot only 3 accessory structures. Again, depending on how you deem the water tank, they could have 4 or potentially 5. In order to keep all of those structures, they would have to go before the Board of Appeals and request a special exception for those structures. They don't necessarily have to identify a hardship. They would just have to request from the Board of Appeals exceptions for at least the additional 2. I do not have information in front of me whether all the structures that are on the lot legally. I did not do that as part of the review. Also, I did notice that on the remnant parcel, which isn't shown on the CSM, but it does show up in the aerial photography to the north of Pebble Brook, there does appear to be another accessory structure that's kind of mid-lot. The problem that we would run in there is that per our ordinance, you're not allowed to have a lot with an accessory structure on it without a principal residence. So in some means, we would have to address that. I was trying to think out of the box a little bit, but I don't think we've received comments from Attorney Macy to see if they're even valid. One would be, as part of the CSM, that structure would have to be taken down so that the remnant land wouldn't have an accessory structure on it. Another option I was thinking is that if there was some type of a legal means, whether it was a deed restriction, et cetera, that would say that when Lot 1 is created, that would not be able to be sold separately from the remnant lot until such time as the principal residence was constructed or under construction. That might be an option. And then I guess the third was letter C, was that potentially there could be maybe some type of a legal means along with a letter of credit that stated that the principal structure had to be built on the remnant lot within X time frame, and if not, then the letter of credit could be pulled and the town could take the structure down. Again, I don't know if either of those is a legitimate option. Again, I was just trying to think a little out of the box for discussion purposes. So those are the kind of the additional comments that I have identified as part of the discussion tonight. And as Engineer Janelli has alluded to, this is just a conceptual review, so there is no formal action that will be taken by the Plan Commission or the board tonight. But we do have to at least identify the issues that we foresee so that Mr. Egan can address those and come back at a later date with a formal certified survey map application.
Okay.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Madam Clerk, did we check with the building inspector to find out what their definition of structure, if all of these buildings fit their definition of structure?
I did talk to Martin, and he said all 5 are considered structures.
Okay. And permits, did we have, what do we have for permits?
Mr. Egan and I went through permits today, and we have all permits except for the cistern.
Okay. Do you have, Mr. Egan, do you have a permit for the cistern?
No.
Okay. I think some of the other questions I would have right off the bat are, where does county zoning and shoreland zoning fall into place with this? Because we've got the Pebble Brook there, and that would be 1,000 feet within shoreland? Yes. I think the pond is 300 and in a stream or a creek or river is 1,000. Is that?
Yeah, on the aerial photography that I included in the packet, the purple line shows the jurisdiction of the county shoreline. The lot that's currently being created, I believe that the accessory structure, the pole barn, kind of part of it may be in, part of it may be out. It's out. But either way, I think that we would want to give the county a courtesy review of this CSM, even though that the lot is being created is outside of the jurisdiction. They can, if they wanted to, enforce their review. It's my understanding that once part of the lot is within shoreline, they can enforce.
Okay.
Which 5 structures are considered structures and which ones are not?
It is my understanding that on the certified survey map that has been provided to you, Martin has identified that all of the structures, I guess with the exception of the arbor, are indeed structures.
So then there's 6 structures.
There's actually 6 structures, 5 structures on the piece that he's trying to create. 5 structures on the piece alone that he's trying to create.
I don't, mine shows 6. There's
And-
a house, a gazebo, a shed, a water tank, a pole building, and a garage.
When we
Adds
talk
up to
about
6.
accessory structures, we're not including the residence. The residence is the principal.
I see what you're saying.
Is a principal structure. The others are classified as accessory structures.
Is that water tank above ground or buried in the ground, or it's a cistern below grade?
Above.
It's above grade.
Therefore, it's classified as a structure.
have you, Mr. Egan, identified a building plot on the remnant parcel where you can put a house that's not in within county zoning or in floodplain or conservancy area?
Yes.
Okay. And you've got some, it looks like you've got,
Drawings are illustrated.
let's take a look.
Everything nowadays is tentative. Let me just get on the other side here. This is a drawing of the entire 40 acres, roughly. This is a section in here is these included in your certified survey map that you've got in front of you. Is this area here in white is the balance, roughly 35 acres. The cistern we're talking about has no door, has no windows, has no roof. I didn't think it was a building.
So it's like a big bathtub.
Cold water.
The town's definition of structure is anything constructed or erected, the use of which requires permanent location on the ground or attachment to something having a permanent location on the ground. Enclosures such as tennis courts, backstops, and similar game court or swimming pool enclosures are, for the purpose of this ordinance, considered to be permanent structures and must be treated as such with respect to all regulations. So our code will call it a structure. I understand it didn't seem to be one at the time you built it, but our code does call it that way.
At the time I put that up, I just finished a building in Waukesha, and it had a little enclosure for garbage. And as long as I didn't put a roof on it, they said it wasn't a building. So I just made the assumption that one was the same as the other. Apparently it was wrong. To the accessory buildings and the square footage. You probably scaled that off of the aerial topo and got 200 square feet. In actuality, it's 85 square feet. And that does put me under the square footage.
The water cistern is only 85 square feet?
85 square feet.
Okay, you're correct. I did measure it off of the aerial photo, so.
Well, I figured.
Okay.
So I think that as far as the square footage goes, I think I'm all right. Number one of the staff review mentioned that the 35 acres to the left would need a determination by the board. It would be excluded from the requirement that there be a certified survey map. And I asked the board to remove that requirement. And that's the week for the 35 remaining acres. On the on the issue of the building, the storage building on the remaining 35 acres. I would hope that you would accept a letter of credit that we would tear that building down if we don't build within a reasonable length of time. I would say a year within the time that our house was sold, as we don't have money enough to build a house without selling our existing home. So I'd ask you that you accept a letter of credit. That in case the building were not, in case we didn't follow through with a building residence, that we'd be all right.
We did discuss that with council, and unfortunately, our ordinance doesn't permit for that. It's still, the ordinance still says that you can't have, if we allowed and signed the CSM, we'd be creating, by doing that, we'd be creating an illegal lot.
Is there any other alternative?
Well, that's what Planner Rybarczyk was trying to go through to find out how can, what is the solution so that we can allow it. And at this point, Planner Rybarczyk, your best choice is?
It appears, A, where it would have to be removed in order to allow the certified survey map to proceed.
The structure, Mr. Egan, that we're talking about, is it a large building? Is it?
No, it's 16 by 20.
Okay.
We're using it as a storage building.
Okay. Something I suppose you want to keep.
Oh, yes, we'd very much like to have it. As I've got some garden down in that neck of the woods, and the electricity to keep the gardens the pump running is in that building.
Sure.
Besides the storage that we desperately need in the winter for our lawn furniture.
Mr. Miller?
Is it on skids that you can just move it? Is it on skids or is it permanently attached? Permanently in the ground with a foundation?
It's permanently down.
On a slab. Okay.
The reason I hesitated there, it formerly was on skids. When we moved it, the building was originally built by the Johnsons, who we bought it from. It was on skids, and we moved it down on the north side of the brook for the purposes of storage. And my wife was she liked skiing, and we made it put a warming, put heat in it, so she had a place to stop at that. But she hasn't been skiing the last few years.
Jamie, one nagging question that I have is where does the county shoreline zoning fit within there? Is that a set of scaled drawing?
This is, yes.
Jamie, would you take a look and just make sure it's 300 from a stream and 1,000 feet from a body of water, and make sure that whatever we're doing, maybe it's not even up to us. Perhaps it's in the county.
Well, there's the shoreline ordinance. It's this dotted line right here, and the building is within 5 feet of that line.
Okay, so you're out.
It appears that it's 300 feet from the stream.
Okay.
Yes.
And if I recall correctly, there is a body of water on that property, or do I not?
Oh, a little pond right here.
Okay. All right. So way out.
That shows on old ancient aerial photos.
Okay.
Doesn't show on any of the topos that were done aerial topos.
I believe the county's jurisdiction is a combination of the distance from Pebble Brook and also some of the wetlands that are on the property as a result of Pebble Brook. Because the shoreline looks to be 300 feet on the north side, but it appears to be greater on the south side, and I think floodplain and wetland where that allows them additional jurisdiction.
All right, and then we'd have to then take an appeal to the appeals board for the 5 accessory building.
It's my understanding that the only appeal he would have would be on the outbuilding on the remnant 35 acres, right? He doesn't have to go there for the 5 buildings.
Yes,
Oh,
he does,
Oh,
because the
sorry.
way that our ordinance is written for a residential district, which
Allows
the
3.
lot that he's creating, which is R1, you can only have a maximum of 3.
So I need to go to the appeals board.
Correct.
Well, I don't know, have we covered everything?
Whereabouts are you proposing to build a new house?
I can't hear what I
Where do you plan on building a new house?
Okay, thank you. We had a new delineation made by soil scientists on where the wetlands are, and I would put it right in here, in this area.
Where Mr. Egan is pointing to would be the far north end of the remnant parcel
Yes,
along
that
Big
would
Bend
be,
Road.
that would be in this area right here. North being this way.
I did have a conversation after Mr. Egan and I had met for a planner appointment with Waukesha County, because that area to the north is outside of their shoreline zoning. They don't have any restriction as far as a setback from the wetland. So our ordinance states that from the C1 district or the wetland, it's 30 feet. So it appears that I hadn't looked at this drawing, but the drawing that Mr. Egan had before, it looked like with the 50-foot front yard setback and the 30-foot rear yard setback, that he still had roughly 25 to 30 feet in width for the house.
That's at the, well, we've got more than, we've got 151 feet. So 30 and, that's 80, so there's quite a distance, and we're, with ease, we'll be able to work something out in there. I brought along the original drawing that the Johnsons gave me. When we first were dickering on buying the property, and the house lies in this area here, and this area was denoted by the southeastern planning to be in a conservancy area. And you'll notice that the big swath here in the middle, this where I'd like to build up in there, and a little bit back in here. That kind of defines that as.
So I think we've got 2 issues that we're struggling with. The first one is the 5 structures that are going to be on the parcel, and the building left on the remnant parcel. And those are the 2 issues that we have to find a solution to.
Okay. Well, I hopefully the appeal board will listen to the 5.
Okay.
They'll find that that'll be all right. But then the one remaining on the 35 parcel without a house on it. There's the rub.
yes, that's going to be our probably more difficult issue.
Okay. Uh, what do you see as being the process of getting that approved or disapproved? Hopefully approved.
Go ahead, Jamie.
My recommendation would be that we put this on the June 27th staff meeting, and we talk about it as a staff with regard to the accessory building on the remnant parcel. And I do believe July 29th, we have Mr. Emmers on for Board of Appeals. I would defer to Clerk Nicholas if we have enough time to notify Mr. Egan for the number of accessory buildings. The issue that we may run into, and I would have to discuss with Attorney Macy, is can we have a Board of Appeals on a subject matter where the lot isn't actually created yet? It's almost like the Board of Appeals would be providing a recommendation for a scenario that is yet to come. And that's some of the complexity to this issue. Yeah.
Let me ask you, Mr. Egan, while they're discussing that, what's the, if you're going to, can you go back to the very first green plan, please? If you're going to build a house in the far north end, what is the 33-foot little spear that you have on the far south end? What is that for? To the south of your existing home, right there.
Right here?
Yeah.
That's for access back in here.
Just a access,
I want to be able to-
lawnmower, grass, whatever you want to use it for.
I tell you,
No, it's just for your own access, was what you're saying.
I'd like to tell you. We found this property by a pure accident. When I was a kid in 1940, I was in the Boy Scout office. The building is now occupied by the Avalon elderly thing. And a man came in and wanted to know if he could get some boys to help him do some planting. I was one of those kids. I helped plant most of the stuff that's here. And my wife and I were living in Sunset Drive, and the traffic was just awful. And we were looking around for several years for a place with water, with different soils types, because I'm an amateur gardener and landscaper. I like that stuff. And we had picked out two spots in New Bern, really crummy places. And I said to Jim one morning that I would leave and drive through the county, the places I know. I'm an excavator, I know the places pretty well. And the first turn I took was on a big bed road. This place was sort of sick up. We hate the park.
I can understand that.
It really hurts. Mr. Johnson was a Dr. Johnson. He was an expert in Appalachian flora and fauna, especially in the Smokies and in the high reaches of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And this place is fraught with flowers and plants from that area. And I got 6 kids, I want to get in there.
That's understandable. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we don't have to take any action on this evening, but I think your suggestion of reviewing this at the staff meeting at staff level to find out what we can and can't do legally with regards to the Board of Zoning Appeals and seeing if we can find a solution to having the structure on the remnant parcel without a primary residence is what we need to address.
One thing that maybe we can put on the table, I don't know the relationship that Mr. Egan has with his neighbor, but Engineer Janelli said that is there a possible way through a meets and bounds description that that accessory structure would be deeded to that property for an interim basis until the principal structure is built and then deeded back, but apparently that might not be an option.
That idea comes as a relief for all the freshmen.
Just thinking out of the box.
There's a chance. That man's lived there for 20 years, and I've yet to meet him. I've walked over to shake hands with him, say hello, and he ran and hide. He, he's a funny fellow.
If you were to have this certified survey approved, what kind of a timetable do you have? You're looking to sell your home and then build a new home?
We need to check.
Right, I understand that. I understand that. What kind of a time frame are you looking at? If that were to be approved, are you looking at putting your home up for sale right away?
Yes. Yeah. I've got my office, and I call it my office, but it's my study. My office is in the, what I call the barn shop and office. We need the room for the tractors and trucks and that kind of stuff. But I am very private. I have a place for myself there. Oh, I can't afford to do that anymore. We have that right in our new house. I've got maybe 6,000 books in my library, and I like to keep them all in one spot. And a new house would, I designed it so that it worked out that way.
Anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Egan?
Trip on the cord here.
Yeah, thanks.
That's kind of a danger.
How will I know about what's going on?
After the staff meeting on the 27th, we'll contact you.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you.
Come on, Journey.
And on to 7, adjournment. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I got it.
Motion carries. Take a short break.
Yeah.
Sir.
Sold the house, and then he's 4 years. That's what so that's why that's where some of my comments came. Okay. Except for Terry. Right. So that's why I'm hoping that at least I can We've also done another kind of meeting where experienced about this party and they temporarily stayed in the house while the house is being built on the backside of the lot. So I mean, like, there's circumstances out there. You know, but what I informally is that, you know, even with the letter of credit, the area right way they recognize that. Yeah, no, I had the out of the box, and that's how I quoted it, my out of the box thinking. This one will be difficult. Can't do that. That time frame was 2 years from that might be what they're asking for is anytime to sell the house. Yeah, that was my options. As I said that, we would have a deed restriction saying that. Or is it underneath the tab?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town Board meeting, Town of Waukesha, July 9th, beginning at 7:15 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with a roll call. Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Fisher?
Here.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Chairman Merrick?
Present.
And Supervisor Wolf?
Here.
And Madam Clerk, have we met all of the open meetings law
Yes, we have.
compliance? And we can begin with citizens' comments. Anybody? Going once? Going twice? We can move on to approval of the minutes from June 25th, 2015. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes from June 25th, 2015.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. To 6, discussion and possible action on conceptual CSM review. Owner is George Egan, West 237 South 5115 Big Bend Road. Planning Commission did not take any action on this, and we are going to discuss that at the staff meeting on June 27th. Is there anybody that wants to take any action on this evening? Move on. On to reports from the fire department.
I think you all have a copy. Ambulance requests for June were 27. Vehicle accidents were at 6. Fire responses were at 11. Mutual aid was given 7 times, and we received mutual aid 10 times. We added a new member to the department in June. 1 member went on leave of absence. We're active at 36. 2 people are on leave of absence, secretary, treasurer, and high school cadet. Fire inspections for the first 6-month period of 2015 were completed with 139 inspections and 21 re-inspections. And for fire prevention stuff, we had fireworks at Merrill Hills Country Club on the 4th, and we'll be at the Summer Festival at Piala's on the 25th and 26th of July.
Any questions for the chief? Thank you. And on to the sheriff. Evening Deputy.
Yeah, how are you guys? So we had a busy month of June here. We had 95 calls for service, 19 were 911 hangups, 3 were alarms, 16 were assisting other agencies or other deputies in other areas. We had 5 assist fires or EMS, 9 disabled vehicles, 30 house and building checks, that could be your house or a business, 10 suspicious people or vehicles, 37 citations, 3 written warnings, 23 verbal warnings, 1 warrant pickup, 3 citizen service and walk-ins, 4 follow-ups, 2 well-being checks. We had a bunch of accidents. We had 6 property damage only, 3 personal injury. We had 4 people who were cited for operating after suspension and revocation, 1 OWI, and 8 other traffic offenses. We had 1 animal case, 1 emergency detention, which is a mental commitment hold, 1 harassment, 3 loud noise complaints, 1 recovered property, 3 thefts, 2 threat complaints, 1 uncontrollable juvenile, 1 violation of court order, and 2 other offenses. You guys have any questions?
It does sound like a busy month.
Yeah, I'll keep on picking up from here, unfortunately.
One quick question, just for understanding, you're referencing my exact words, but the 16 instances in which you assisted others or that type of thing, you leave the town of Waukesha then in those 16? Is that what that's describing?
Correct. So that could be backing up the village of Big Bend,
Sure.
or our 05 district, which covers pretty much the town of Vernon. Otherwise, we get pulled to the west, which is 06 is pretty much a section of the town of Genesee and North Prairie. Otherwise, 7 and 8, they're in the southwest, so that's Wales. Township of Eagle, usually we don't make it that far. Before we do go to those districts, we have to get on the radio, ask for permission, the supervisor has to approve it. The hardest part is that we have so many few deputies south of I-94 compared to the north. There's only 1, 2. There's 5 of us south of I-94, and the rest of us are north. So if we know that we need backup, what we need to do is request permission. If they approve it, then we're able to go, and then once that situation is handled, we float back to our area and patrol the town of Waukesha. So,
thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, how many total deputies on the shift?
That could range, and it ranges by shift. Usually on afternoon second shift, we have anywhere from 16 to 20 deputies. But the number of deputies that are in the south always stays the same. It determines if we have rovers or anything like that. So most of the deputies, again, are in the north. That's because of the other contracts and because of the other areas up north compared to down here.
Okay.
So, all right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yep.
On to 8, new business, discussion and possible action on the following: the 2015-2016 snow season plowing bids. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Supervisor Durr.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I think if you've looked and reviewed the snowplow contract, it came in somewhat of a different format this year with quite a number of options. I kind of laid them all out in this document here. It says at the top, Town of Waukesha 2015-16 snowplow analysis. And at this point, I'd like to make a motion, and then we can get into some discussion on that if it is so seconded. So I would make a motion that we accept option 1 from Wolf Paving for the 2015-16 snowplow contract.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. To give you a little background on the different options, the contract proposal came through with 5 options, and Mr. Wolf is here with us this evening if you have any specific questions. I'm sure he'd be happy to address them for you. Option 1 is similar to what we have done in other years with just a straight hourly fee. It's broken out into 4 categories. I only broke it out into 2. There's a price for the dump truck, with a typical dump truck with a plow and a spreader that you're used to seeing on the road. They use a series of 1-ton pickup trucks that also salt. Those are the 2 primary vehicles that we use in the town. I don't think last year at all we had occasion to use the front end loader or a skid steer loader. So I didn't include those in my analysis at all. Option 1 is $134 an hour for the dump truck and $118 an hour for a plow truck. That is an increase from last year. So what Wolf went ahead and did is they gave us a few other options to consider to address our snowplow needs. Option 2 would be to pay a retainer of $140,000, and then they would charge back to that retainer throughout the year at a reduced rate. So the rate for a dump truck would be, instead of $134 an hour, would be $115 an hour. And for a 1 ton, it would be $99 an hour rather than $118 an hour. And Mr. Wolf, if I misquote this, please stop me. I just took it out of the contract, didn't have a chance to talk to you, but I think I understood what you were going after. So essentially what we would be doing is prepaying for a certain number of hours, and that money would be paid whether we use the hours or not. So we would be prepaying 1,273 hours at $110 an hour. I tried to average the two. I think we use slightly more dump trucks than we do 1 tons, so I picked the number of $110 an hour, and that would give us 1,273 hours. The top portion of this analysis here, it lays out in the first column the last 5 seasons of snow plowing. The second column to the right is the costs that we paid contractors for that year. The third column is the average of those costs, throwing out the high and the low. Try to get some of the variability out of it. The next column is the number of hours that contractors consumed to do the work for the whole season. And again, then an average, throwing out the high and the low. You'll notice that for 2011 and 2012 season, we didn't have the hours available to us in the documentation that we reviewed in the town hall, so I just called that the low. You'll see that that coincides with the low for contractor cost, so it was probably the appropriate one to pick. Next column over is the average number of hours that we used. So we used an average over the last 5 years, throwing out the high and the low of 1,000 hours, 10 hours. And then the final column, or the second from the final column, is the average snowfalls that we had for those given seasons. And then again, the total snowfall for those given seasons. And then the last column is an average, again throwing out the high and the low. So the reason I bring that up now is because, in my opinion, you can see that paying for 1,273 hours, prepaying that, if you look past our past 5 years, you'll see that in 2 instances we did use more than 1,273 hours, but our average over the last 5 years has been 1,000. So that's the reason that I did not choose that option. The next option is to pay a standby fee of $5,000 per month, so I just took the total of $25,000 for the whole season. That would be November, December, January, February, March. And again, that money would be paid whether we use it or not, and we would not charge back into that, slightly different than a retainer. By providing that standby fee to the contractor, we would pay a reduced rate, in this case a reduced rate on the dump and the 1 ton of $10 an hour. So my math tells me that we wouldn't break even on that until we use 2,500 hours. And again, since we don't typically use that many hours, it didn't seem like a good option to me. Option number 4 is back to a retainer option again, this time for $125,000, and then again a slightly reduced rate for the dump and the 1 ton. That tells me that we would have to consume 1,136 hours at the same rate, 110 hours, before that would be attractive to us, and I didn't consider that, given our history over the last 5 years, to be the best option. And then finally, the last option is something that many communities are doing now, is they're paying their contractors a total to take care of their snowplow needs up to a certain snowfall accumulation. In this case, Mr. Wolf proposed that we would pay $190,000 to Wolf, and they would take care of all of our snowplow needs through the season up to 55 inches. You'll see that the average snowfall over the last 5 years, throwing out the high and the low, has been 38 inches. In addition to that, to me, the $190,000 total was on the high side. Over the last 5 years, the only time that we have gone over that amount was in 2013 and 2014, when we spent $224,000. So putting that all together, I came to the conclusion that our best option in this case was to go with option one, even though the hourly rate is higher than we paid last year. If anybody's got any questions on all of that, I'd be happy to.
Questions for Supervisor Dorr or perhaps Mr. Wolf? Well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And on to 8B, the 2015 road paving bids. And again, I'll turn this over to Supervisor Durr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With great assistance from our engineer, Mr. Gianelli, we put a request for bids out for our road paving needs for this year. And it's the first year since I've been on the board that we engaged them, and I want to say it, quite frankly, was a wonderful experience. We're lucky to have an engineering firm that knows a whole lot more about paving than I do, because if we relied on what I knew, we would not have done as well. So we have a couple of different documents. The one I'm going to focus on looks like this. Got a couple of different shaded options here. So each of the shaded, non-shaded options is what I consider a project. We put out 7 projects that we wanted to consider for paving this year. We had 2 bidders, Wolf and Payne and Dolan, and those were, each project is broken down into pulverizing and shaping, that's the P&S, and then laying down a 2.5-inch binder, going over the top with 1.5-inch surface finish, and then if there's any necessary traffic control. So over on the right, you'll see totals for each of those projects, both for Wolf and Payne and for Payne and Dolan. Just to dispense with the whole low bidder, in every case, Wolf was the low bidder, both on the unit cost and on the project cost. So that's, for anything that we're going to do, that is my recommendation to go with Wolf. And that was Engineer Gianelli's recommendation also. It came back, in my opinion, more than the DPW department wanted to spend on paving for this year. So I believe that Engineer Gianelli has put a letter together that recommends doing 5 total projects. So the projects that I would recommend that we move forward with are items 5 through 8 for Canterbury Lane, items 9 through 12 from Meadowview Court East, items 13 through 16 for Meadowview Drive, which is the section north of Red Oak. Items 17 through 20 for Fawn Court. Items 25 and 26, which is to take care of the paving in the town hall lot that was done as part of the sewer project. And then there is an issue in items 27, 28, 29, and 31. These items were handled a little differently. These items are kind of a bulk cost to be spread across all of the projects. These items are, no pun intended, not set in stone, because we really don't know what portion or lack of portion we're going to use for any of these items until we start digging up the roads. So it has a tendency to put a higher cost on the project in total, which I think you came to the conclusion was $211,000.
That's correct, yeah.
I think it's reasonable to assume that we will likely not use all of that amount. But given the nature of the projects, you can't put yourself in a position where you get the road pulverized and then you have to stop to come back for approval for additional money. We do have adequate funds to cover the total cost, should that be what's incurred. I would look to move some money from, should we get to the whole $211,000, I would recommend that we pull some of that from the capital project fund. In the case, only until we would get to the high end, the rest of it can be covered out of our operational budget for this year. So that is the proposal that is in Engineer Janelli's letter, which I have somewhere here. Just one second. So my motion, Mr. Chairman, would be to award the road paving as laid out in the letter from Engineer Janelli to Kathy Nicholas dated July 9th, 2015, in the amount of $211,010.
Is there a second?
For road paving.
Wolf paving.
I'm sorry?
You're
To Wolf
awarding the
paving.
bid
To Wolf Paving, yes, thank you.
I'll second the motion.
My one comment is if we were doing roughly let me just get this straight here. Just shy of 50% of the paving, it would seem to me that we should be probably allocating just shy of 50% of the 82,400 for the contingencies of undercutting and so forth.
Okay.
And that would bring us then down to 100 and
The
169.
the cost of the projects stand alone without the aggregate that we spoke of, I believe, is
28.6. Yeah.
6?
And change.
Yeah.
May I ask a question following up on that, and maybe Engineer Janelli could better answer to this. If the board is inclined to approve this and go this direction, is the structure of the contract then for these fixed lump sum amounts for items 5 through 20, and then 20 through 25 through 29 and 31 would be written as unit prices into the contract? Correct. So, I mean, those, excuse me, I take that back. 25 and 26, well, I guess that's this question. 25 and 26 go in as lump sums or unit pricing for the town hall part here. How would that go into the contract?
They, all of the quantities are unit prices, either by ton or lump sum or square yard or cubic yard. So we'd have to keep track of quantities to make sure that, you know, we're paying them the right amount and they're doing the right things. If we go down the path of reducing the quantity on the items that are somewhat unknowns at this point, I guess I'd caution the town that they were, in essence, the quantities and the costs associated with those items were kind of guesses on my part based on looking at the roads and getting a feel for other projects of a similar nature. To reduce the quantity of those items because we're reducing the roads is logical. However, I would say that if the town is comfortable and has a budget that is available for that, I would suggest leaving it in for two reasons. One is it gives us a bigger cushion so that we don't have to come back to the board and look for additional funds if we, we're going to say we cut $40,000 out of the contract and we start the work and now we need the extra $40,000, now we got to come back again. So that was one reason. The other reason was it would muddy the water of the award, and I was choosing not to do that.
Can I just try it in a little bit different way and take a specific example? If you take item number 6 is the 2.5-inch first pass binder for Canterbury, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Would the contract award on that be for 2.5-inch binder in place at $60 per ton? It would be written that way, not for the lump sum of $21,900.
Correct.
And then basically, you or your staff will monitor.
Right. We'll keep track of the low
that.
tickets and add them up, and it may come out to be 2,500, or it may come out to be 2,520, or something like that. And then we would charge accordingly, $60 per ton.
Fair enough. And then and I understand that. Then for the items that are not job specific, which is 25 through 29 and 31, those are not job. Well, maybe I shouldn't even put the town hall patch in that, but for sure 27 through 21 and 27 through 29 and 31 are not job specific, right? So those would simply be written in as the respective unit prices, and then the authorization to use those funds would be at your discretion and monitored.
Correct.
If and where necessary for any of the other projects where that work might apply.
That's right.
Okay,
Saw cutting is the bid item 27 full depth saw cut. That's a little different. That's each of the roads will use that. There's probably some value associated with quantity associated with, say, MacArthur that we're not going to use. But rather than change the quantity for a $2 per lineal foot item, I just assume leave it in.
I understand.
If that makes sense.
Can I go just one step further,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Just, looking all the way downstream on this, and Supervisor Durr made the comment that we could and probably would appropriately need and use some money that is in our capital fund for these purposes. And I guess for my sake, I'm not sure whether we're able to identify exactly what that is tonight. I think there's sufficient funds to do that. I would support doing that, and I guess maybe even Clerk Nicholas can tell us whether it's appropriate or not. I think we might look when this is all put together and we anticipate how much of that comes out of the general fund that's already been budgeted for this year. We've got some in roads and then out of capital type of thing. Would we not be looking at our next meeting then perhaps to do a budget amendment, make those funds available when we've got a sense and shape on where this is going? Is that far enough to go tonight? And Supervisor Durr, is that consistent with your intention? You want to go a different way?
Did Supervisor Durr, didn't you say that this was all in operating already?
Certainly the core costs of each project, in other words, the $128,600, is easily handled in the operating budget. If we would start getting to the upper limit of using all the aggregate, then I think it would be appropriate to start moving into the capital budget.
Okay, then I guess a question to it, with the availability of that money out of the operating budget, and I know when we looked at some of the maintenance things previously we're doing, are we not contemplating doing anything more with that this year? We're spending the money for the repaving here.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Well, we had left, when we looked at some of the crack filling and I think slag part of it,
Yes.
on the bids on that, we acted on some of it and we set some of that aside and said, let's look at that at another day. And I thought when we get these paving things, are we intending to do anything beyond this for road projects or slag or anything for this year?
No, this would round out the road projects for the
Okay,
year.
so the slag stuff
with
would be
what we've
off.
done, with what we've approved
What
so
we've
far.
committed to, so any of the, and I believe it was bids for slag, that would be off the table for this year.
No, we awarded bids for slag.
Any slag part of it, or what part did we not do?
There was some additional. You're asking about the additional because we set some aside and said, let's see where the paving bids come in. So your question, I believe,
Is that off the table then
Yes.
for the
Yes.
rest of
The
the
answer to
year?
that question is
Okay,
yes.
and that makes sense to me. I can support that.
All right. I've got a question. I think by approaching this the way that you're approaching it with load tickets and so forth, you've changed this from a bid price to an estimate price. What?
Yeah, because
That defeats-
most road projects are by quantity to keep track of the actual cost, and the actual cost will differ from the contract cost. It may be higher, maybe lower.
But then we've defeated the purpose of a bid. For instance, what happens if on Canterbury, if Payne and Dolan comes in with, Payne and Dolan came in at $22,940. Wolf came in at $21,900 for the binder course. What happens if Wolf comes in at $24,000 because he used more binder? Then he's no longer the low bidder, and you've changed this from a bid to an estimate.
No, I think what the assumption that we're using is that no matter who does the work, that quantity is close to what reality will be. So theoretically, if Wolf did 365 tons and Payne and Dolan did 365 tons, their costs would be different.
So,
Agreed.
let me, if I can just
And the work
interject.
would take 365 tons.
So what you're saying is that your estimate for Canterbury 2.5 binder is 365 tons.
Correct.
You're making the assumption that if it's 355 tons, that both contractors would have used 355 tons.
Correct.
So from that point of view, they would still be the low bidder. Wolf would. He's making the assumption that no matter who does the work, the quantity is going to be the same, even if it's not the same as the estimate.
Fair enough. Whose number is, and we'll just focus on Canterbury binder for the moment because that's where I'm at. Whose number is the 365?
That's my number.
That's your number.
Correct.
Okay, so the number we really need to be concerned about is not the 365, it's the 21.9 from Wolf Paving, because that's what he bid to do that project.
Correct.
Okay,
That portion.
that portion of that bid.
That's right.
So, from my perspective, if Wolf needs 375 tons to do it, I don't care, because his bid price is 21.9.
That's not how the contract is set up and written. You pay by the ton, and that's an estimated quantity of what it is.
And I think that is different than we put it out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, just for clarification, so really when they're bidding their unit price, essentially.
Correct.
Devin, why don't you come on up to the microphone if you would, please? Do you agree with the quantities that Engineer Gianelli had put forward, both in, regardless if it's square yards or tonnage?
I didn't check the quantities because I didn't bid that. Someone within our company did, but we work with them a lot, and this is very common to bid it this way.
Okay.
And they're very accurate, typically. Like he said, if they're off maybe a very small amount of truckload. It might even be because together they decide one area should have a little more or a little less material. But we have to put a proper thickness to get the proper compaction and to meet specifications. So in order to do that, we're at that thickness, and we're keeping track along the way so we don't go over and so we're not under. So it's a fine line, but it doesn't sway too far one way or another.
Fair enough.
Mr. Chairman, two or three comments real quickly. I understand and appreciate your concern. You stay up for a minute if you want. But I think my interest in this is we may not be done with you. That's why the invitation is to remain.
I was going to sit front.
That chair is real comfortable there. I know that. But my concern about part of this is because we have stumbled on this a bit in the past. But you're saying is the way the solicitation was made on this, it's clear that this will be awarded on the basis of unit prices.
Correct.
So,
and based on the roads that we choose to do.
I understand that. So I'm comfortable with that, but we have stumbled on that in the past. I think that's a fair admission. I mean, just drilling down a little bit further, I'm thinking that, and I see we got line items of traffic control for 8, 12, 16, 20. I mean, typically there, I'm assuming that price is fixed at the $500. I mean, I'm assuming that this is going to be written that is not something about which there would be variation.
No.
And I'd like to think if, Chris, if your work is accurate and have every reason to believe that, we ought not have much discussion about the difference in square yardage for any of the pulverizing and shaping or that type of thing. I mean, that should not be too much of an unknown.
No,
I'm sure if it's significantly more than that, we'll hear from Mr. Wolf, and if it's less, we won't, right? Is that fair?
Yep.
That was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but, okay.
And
It won't matter either way. It's a sum
I
of ours.
understand. Okay.
And we could take this data and rebid it, knowing what we know now for total cost, but it would require a rebid, right?
Right.
I don't think we want to get involved in that, and I think
Perhaps,
that
but
would,
it is an option, it is something we could.
I understand that, but
Agreed.
I think we need not to disenfranchise people in the process or whether or not. I'm comfortable with where we're at on this, and Engineer Janelli and his staff are going to monitor this closely, and I'm comfortable with proceeding.
There is one last item that I'd like to bring out, and that is with the passage of the budget today and prevailing wage being in it. Prevailing wage does not go into effect until January 1st of 2017. However, in the next few days, Governor Walker could veto that part of the budget out and made it get effective immediately. For putting it on the table, would we want to, because this is under prevailing wage, would we want to wait until next week and we could call a special meeting if you so chose, or wait 2 weeks to award bids, or rebid it knowing that prevailing wage is no longer required?
Personally, I don't think it's necessary. I'm comfortable with how this is laid out, and it's been my understanding that most of the municipalities around here, if not throughout the state and even nationwide, do bid it on the per quantity.
It's pretty standard.
You actually get a better deal doing it on a per unit price or per quantity, because it's, if you do a lump sum, we feel we have to build some cushion in case we miss something, and so we typically charge more money if it's bid that way. So it's actually a benefit.
It kind of evens out the playing field in the bidding process as well. I mean, everybody kind of knows what they're up against. They know that I have this quantity and I have to provide a price for it. And whereas with a, say, a lump sum bidding process, contractors may not entirely know what exactly is required.
And it incentivizes us to build it properly to the exact proper depth and not possibly go too thin. And, you know, different people have different strategies that they may take.
Just a comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman, your reference to prevailing wage, I mean, that's a thought-provoking thing that I hadn't thought about at all. I just think at this point in time, with where we are at here on the 9th of July and just maintaining a measure of integrity with this process, I think we need to move forward. I mean, it's a intriguing thought. We're not going to ask Mr. Wolf tonight if that would affect his bid. I mean, the reality, and I've been there before, sometimes in rebidding, for whatever reason, people choose to take a pass. They come back with a higher price. I mean, that's their prerogative. There's nothing untoward about that. So it's really a intriguing and thought-provoking subject that you raise. At this point in time, I think the town is better off by respecting the integrity of this process and moving forward.
Fair enough. Anything further? We've got a motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. On to 9, current business, discussion and possible action on the following. Draft ordinance, the 2015-03, repeal and recreate section 6-3-12, uniform street address system. The uniformity of the new town address flags, the size, the color, and what text items should be printed on them, For example, the town of Waukesha, house number, street name, was requested by resident Laura Eaton. We were here a few weeks back and had reviewed the different signs that were available in different colors and asked Clerk Nicholas if she would contact the sign companies, and she did contact several of them, ask if we could get the special burgundy color, and that was a no-go unless we bought all of the town signs immediately.
Actually, Lang said no, period. They're not doing any special colors any longer, just the 3 colors.
And so we have before us 3 colors, and what type of verbiage we want on the signs. And Chief Dan, do you have, I think we should probably lean on you a little bit, do you have a preference of color, knowing what's around us in Vernon and Big Bend?
The only thing I have to say for that is that it'd be nice to have a different color than they have, so that you see consecutive change that comes in, especially on I know at work, the whole sign felt all of the temps orders were kind of mixed together a little bit on that street line.
That leaves us with red, you understand.
This is a fire chief. Trucks are red.
So afraid to say that, but yeah, because we do have 2 on one side and 3 on the other. So,
We could, I mean, unless are you dead set that you want an absolute differentiation in color from community to community? While that may be true, I'm asking for your opinion on as the fire chief.
it does make things simpler.
Okay.
Make things more simple.
What is the preference of the board?
I get the idea of having a different color. The only, I guess, issue I have with that is there are some existing residents that have one of the other colors. So does that then make them illegal?
It would.
I mean, we've got existing ordinances that say you have to have the tiles, and as we all know, a lot of the residences are lacking that already. Doesn't seem to be too much enforcement. I'm not opposed that somebody has a different color.
Are you volunteering to drive the town? And
Not at all.
okay.
Just merely making an observation.
At the last board meeting, you decided on the size of 20 by 8, how you wanted the letters, the town of Waukesha at the top, the alphanumeric characters in the center for the house number, and then the street at the bottom. I put that all into the ordinance.
You do have burgundy reflective background in though.
You asked me to put the burgundy in because it could be changed.
Okay.
We got a couple of comments. I'm hung up on the burgundy, but if we can't have it, I don't really so much care whether it's red, blue, or green. It'll make a whole lot of difference to me. As far as people who have already purchased existing signs, do we have any sense as to how many people that might involve? What's that?
Maybe about a dozen.
Maybe about a dozen. I mean, I don't think that's a issue that we need to stumble over. If somebody had a different colored sign, I mean, that for the moment wouldn't bother me. If they want to go buy a different one or whatever, I don't much care. The only other thing that I would like to ask, I guess, the way this is written, I want to make sure it's what we want. We're telling people they can either have address flags or address tiles, one or the other, but not both. Is that what it is that we are asking for? This is It says displayed in one of the following manners at the option of the property owner. And I'm not challenging or questioning that, but you have one or the other, but not both.
I do. I put in one or the other. It wasn't to keep people from putting both up. It just meant that you could, it's at the property owner's discretion, so they can do one or the other. If they did both, they'd still have a flag or they'd have a tile.
Okay, the only thing, and I'm not trying to be picky about it, but just so we're sending clear signals to people, I mean, if we go ahead and do this, I mean, this is going to have to go on the town's website. I think it would be an ideal place to do it, and Kathy, you and your staff and stuff are going to be the people who are going to be in charge of this, but I mean, the verbiage says displayed in one of the following manners at the option of the property owner. I think it should either say in one. I don't care that much what it is, but I think we need to be clear. So what's the pleasure of the board? I don't care. I just want clarity.
Are you are you amending it? You want to, what line are you seeing?
I'm just asking the other 4 board members what they would prefer.
How about this? I'll make a motion to accept the ordinance as drafted, changing the line that says displayed in one of the following manner to read displayed in one or both of the following manners. In addition, under 6-3-12 M II, rather than reflect the color of burgundy, to reflect the color of red.
I'll second. Are you finished?
Yes, sir.
I'll second the motion if I can ask just one other simple clerical thing, and that would simply be under the double I think just the typo, I think border, BOARDR, I think is my 3 adult children who come home frequently. I think you want BORDER, I think. Double check that.
I have a couple other just small changes to the verbiage as well, if it can be tagged onto the same motion. At line 136, after the word premises, just add address flags described under MII may be purchased and installed instead of purchasing address tiles at the option of the property owner. And a little farther down at line 143, after the word manners, add at the option of the property owner. At line 143, after the word manners, add at the option of the property owner.
Do we want to change the line to 144?
Is there more than one version of
this? Can we change the
this?
line to 144?
Sure.
What you have in front of you, I highlighted what Supervisor Radke is putting in. It's after speaking with Attorney Macy, these were changes from the original document that was set in your packet. So he's taking care of cleaning that up for you.
I think one other change on line 158, if we're going to allow both address tiles and flags, then we should, to be consistent, address tiles and or address flags.
Then there's 2 other changes that are in there as well. At line 157, after the word, replace the word numbers with address tiles or address flags. And lastly, at line 162, after the word install, replace street numbers with address tiles.
We'll change that to 158 and 153.
And one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And that would be, we say address flags may be purchased and installed instead of purchasing address tiles. Are we, the town of Waukesha, then? I mean, are we going to define who's installing?
What line are you on,
What
please?
line?
Well, I was back on mine. It's 137, 138, 139. I mean, it says address flags described under M double I may be purchased and installed instead of purchasing. Are these installed by the property owner?
For certain.
Yes.
Yeah, the town
Yes.
isn't
I
installing them.
I understand that.
The clarification was made because we currently state in K that when we're talking about the tiles, that the tiles are purchased at the town hall. And I want what this purchased and installed was that they are going to purchase them not at the town hall. I didn't want every resident to come to the town hall and I've got to contact the vendor and start putting in orders. So.
Okay, let's just back up for a real quick minute. If it's been a few years since I've done it. If I come to purchase address tiles, I purchase those from the town of Waukesha, and I pay what?
$20,
A flat $20 fee.
right? Unless they just lost one tile, then they would just pay for that one tile.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Do both the motion maker and the second agree to the additional changes?
Yes.
What would be the procedural step to just make these changes and take care of it at the next meeting? Are we better off doing that?
I personally think that would be smart, just so we got the complete clean language.
That's fine.
So do we just table this then?
Table to the date certain of the next
So
meeting.
then I make a motion to table it until the next board meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The next one, before we move past this ordinance draft, do you want the legal to review it? The ordinance?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary.
No.
Unless he wants to do it for free.
No. Pretty confident.
On to B, draft general fund bonds policy.
Sure, I'll do that quick. You should have in front of you just a single sheet of paper, about a third of the way down. This, I believe it's Clerk Nicholas's and my intention. This is just for discussion tonight. We will deal with this formally, but you might recall late last year, we set forth about, I think, 11 different things on the list that we needed to do to adopt some policies and procedures for managing town funds. We've knocked off some of those things, and there's a few more to go. But the need to adopt a policy for maintaining or managing a fund balance in the general fund is something that has been a written recommendation, at least in the 2 audits that have been produced by Baker Tilly have strongly advised us to do. To the best of my knowledge, we have never had a policy in that regard, and there's a couple of purposes for this. If you look at the bullet point here, and I should indicate Kathy looked at a similar kind of policy from the city of Brookfield. We looked at some of that. Theirs, I think, it was, what, a page and a half or 2 pages long. We have to figure out how much detail we want to go into, but a couple of the make sense things, the purpose for doing it is try to make sure that the cash flow needs of the town of Waukesha can be met with a margin of safety to preserve credit worthiness because of the very conservative fiscal policies that the town has pursued in the past. That's not presently an issue, but those are a couple of general purposes. One of the other things that we have been advised by auditors and legal counsel, is there is a limit as to the amount of money that the town can tax for and simply put into a general fund without some purpose in mind for its use. And without getting too deep into it, the town board has had 2 workshops in recent weeks working on another part of the plan, and that's developing a capital plan. We do have an established capital fund, and the capital needs of the town going forward, fire equipment and so forth, are going to be significant. So part of what this leads into is ultimately transferring some money which would now be unassigned and in the general fund into a capital fund to meet those future needs. There's a simple little bullet point thing, and we'll open this up for discussion in a minute, but we looking for just a little direction or discussion tonight, not a motion, not an action, but what we want for a basic policy. Ours is fairly simple. I think the reality of it is every year at the end of the year, December 31st, when the auditors go through the books, they make a representation to us as to how much money there is in the general fund which is not assigned. That which is not spent during the year reverts into the general fund unless it's committed to some kind of a capital project that carries over some period of time. And we've had some recommendations on that. The statement here is to just a suggestion that the unassigned balance maintained in the general fund be at least 25%, but not more than 40% of the ensuing year's budgeted expenditures. If you loosely said that the town of Waukesha has a $3 million budgeted expenditures per year, which is fairly close to where we've been at, 25% of that would be $750,000 or $750,000. 40% would be $1.2 million, so it would be somewhere in that range. Frames of reference, the one we looked at for the city of Brookfield, theirs is couched in terms of generally not less than 2 months nor more than 4 months. Well, that'd be a sixth or a third, so that's 16 2/3 to 33 1/3%. So we're kind of hunting in that range, I believe, and we'll still want to, whatever we do past this past council and past our auditor, to make sure it passes muster for them, I believe, just in terms of some preliminary discussions, to maintain more than 40%, I don't believe is something that they would recommend or advise. I put a note on there just about other considerations and policies. Again, if you look at some of the municipalities, they have all kinds of language in there about estimating, having financial officers estimate the amount of unassigned general funds they will have at the end of the year, and then they give themselves the opportunity to look at that in terms of reducing the tax levy and that type of thing. Open up for discussion. I think we need something. My thought is that we keep it simpler rather than too complicated to begin with. We can always build some buttons, whistles, and mirrors on top of that. And if you're inclined to do this, which we've been advised to do, then I think what happens is each year when that audit becomes available, I mean, typically that's March or April or thereabouts, I would think that this would be reconciled, so some of that money would be moved out of the general fund into the capital fund. So that's kind of the perspective, and I open that up to thoughts or questions. I think Kathy and I have discussed. I think we'll have, whatever we put together, have auditor and council look at it. We may not get this in the first pass, but that's where we're trying to go with it. And again, we've been strongly advised we need to do this.
So are you looking to adopt a policy this evening?
No, I think this is just for discussion purposes, but particularly, I mean, if anybody has anything to do with it, those bookends, if you will, of the 25 and 40%, I mean, maybe people simply want to think about that. Not looking for action on this tonight, but want to give people an idea to have a thought about where this is going. Again, you may even want to look back. If you get copies of the audits from Baker Tilly, you can see the exact verbiage in there where they strongly advise us to do this type of thing.
Well, it sounds like something that we should be discussing at the next budget meeting that we have scheduled for Yeah, when do we have that set? 14th at 7 a.m.
I think that's not inappropriate or is appropriate to discuss that at that point in time because that's part of that general concept. But I mean, any action on this, I think, needs to be taken at a board meeting.
Agreed.
It could be taken. I mean, we're not even looking to table this or anything. It's just for discussion. If anybody has anything to say tonight, that's fine. If not, we can move on. It's going to be back at us.
Anything further on this issue? Let's move on to C, connection on Green Lane bypass. Supervisor Durer, I believe you had wanted that put on the agenda. Was that you? I'm sorry.
Not me.
No, I put it on for clarification, just stayed on from past, to get a kind of an update on where we are with the project.
Okay. Did you have a desire to send anything to the county regarding?
Are they aware of the decision of the board at whatever meeting we decided?
I doubt it. We haven't sent them anything. Would you like?
Not sent them a letter. That's kind of why it's on here. What's our next step? What would you
Looking
like?
at the letter from June 23rd, I got the distinct impression that they knew that. But if they don't, then I think perhaps the chairman or the clerk should send a letter with the result of the vote from, help me out, June something, what was it, May? Second meeting in May?
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
with our decision.
The only comments that I would make about that, and I think we had that meeting, we could certainly tell them what the board action was at that night, but clearly this would have to be approved, I think, to comply with our ordinances, the construction of the cul-de-sac by the Plan Commission. I don't think the motion specifically dealt with waiving the provision of the ordinance that restricts the length of a street to 1/4 mile or 1,320 feet to do a cul-de-sac. So, I mean, that if we're serious about doing that, that would have to pass both the Plan Commission and the town board. And then I think we get into the issues of who would pay for that expense if we're inclined to do that. So, I mean, I don't mind sharing with the county what the board did, but I think that's an incomplete process at best.
And I've asked the clerk to place it on the next planning commission agenda.
All right. Then we can move on to authorization of accounts payable. We have a grand total of $54,714.58. Is there a motion?
I'll move to pay that amount.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks for coming.